You might be surprised to know that not everyone has a full-frame mirrorless camera, or any camera at all for that matter, to take on vacation. For most people, their only camera is the one in their pocket, that is, their phone. And this is a great thing. It means more people than ever are taking photos on their holidays and preserving memories. Right now, I happen to have two of the highest rated camera phones on the market today, the S23 Ultra and the iPhone 15 Pro, so I thought, why not leave my mirrorless camera at home for a day and spend the day in Barcelona comparing these two phones as my primary camera, so I can help you decide which one is for you. For this comparison, I have selected categories which I think are important when traveling. The first is photo quality. In this category, I'm just deciding which phone gave me the best results, taking nothing else into account. To do this, I took a bunch of photos with each phone and I tried to frame them as identically as possible. So let's look at a few and see which ones came out best in different conditions. Looking at this photograph through the aeroplane window, you can see that the Samsung photo is much more sharpened than the iPhone photo. At first glance, this makes the photo from the Samsung look more detailed, even though it actually isn't. The Samsung photo looks more processed and has a very HDR-ish look, whereas the iPhone photograph looks more natural. The photograph taken on the inside of the plane shows that the Samsung is capturing more dynamic range than the iPhone. The inside of the plane looks very similar, but if you pay attention to the windows, you will notice that you can see the ground outside in the Samsung picture, whereas on the iPhone picture it's just an overexposed white window. This photograph was taken out the back window of the apartment where we were staying. Here, the tables are turned and it appears as if the iPhone is capturing more dynamic range. The color temperature is very different, with the iPhone choosing a cooler temperature than the Samsung. So now it's selfie time in front of the Sagrada Familia, and both selfies look very similar. For both of these, I'm using the back wide-angle camera. The results look very similar, although if you observe very carefully, you're getting a bit more saturation in the sky on the Samsung. I don't ever really use the front camera on phones for selfies because they're usually much worse than the rear cameras. With a little bit of practice, you can learn to aim pretty well without having to look at the screen. Now these two photographs are taken at the maximum zoom on each phone. On the left, we have the 3x zoom of the iPhone, and on the right, we have the 10x zoom of the Samsung. Obviously, the Samsung is able to capture much more detail because it has a much longer optical zoom. So if grabbing fine detail of architecture is your thing, then your only choice will be the Samsung. Here again, we see the incredible power of the Samsung lens. This zoom lens is not a gimmick and definitely has its uses. The interior wide-angle shot also appears virtually identical at first glance, but if you look carefully at the windows, you can see that in this case, the iPhone is preserving more of the details and the highlights. And right afterwards, we have a shot of this statue, in which case the Samsung has the clear lead in detail preservation in the highlight areas. Then for this shot, it's back to the iPhone having the advantage. Again here, I just want to show you the power of the 10x telephoto lens, which the iPhone 15 just cannot get close to. Here are a few shots using the zoom lens just to show you again it's not a gimmick. There was no way I could get the details of the windows like this with my iPhone. Now panorama mode is something I use all the time. iPhone has been a master of panoramic pictures for years, and this hasn't changed with the iPhone 15. Sometimes, even if I don't actually need a panorama, I would use panorama anyway, just because of the extra detail that it provides. So this photograph has a complete 180 from one side of the interior of the church to the other side. The Samsung just could not compete. It could not complete the action of a full 180 degrees before stopping on its own. Zoomed in, you can see that the iPhone is also capturing a lot more detail than the Samsung. Here we are on the outside again, and you're seeing again very similar photographs. However, zooming in, you can see that the 24 megapixel photos of the iPhone is indeed delivering more detail than the 12 megapixel photos from the Samsung. So it looks like in good even lighting, the iPhone comes out on top. On the streets again, and these two photographs look remarkably similar. They are really hard to tell apart. The iPhone again has a warmer tone and the Samsung has a cooler tone. Even if you zoom in, it's hard to tell the difference. But if you look very carefully again, pixel peeping now, the iPhone is resolving a little bit more detail. It's more of the same with the picture of this hospital. While the Samsung picture initially looks more detailed, a closer examination reveals that this is mostly due to the extra sharpening applied. Zoom in into the clock tower, for example, and you can clearly see the extra detail in the iPhone shot. So that 24 megapixel jump is really making a difference here. Okay, entertainment. I've left this in here because our smartphones are usually the only source of entertainment we take with us on holiday. So I'm rating phones based on how entertaining they are. So both phones have similar capabilities, but the S23 Ultra takes the win here because of the larger display. It was much nicer to watch videos on the screen of the S23 than the iPhone, and I guess the same would apply to games, even though I don't really game on the go very much. So I'm going to get into the conclusions now. I'm going to start with the photo shooting experience. So neck and neck photos look pretty much the same, the overall photo quality, but generally the Samsung produces more sharpened images with an HDR look, while the iPhone produces softer and, to me, more realistic looking photos, despite maintaining more detail in its 24 megapixel photos compared to the 12 megapixel photos from the Samsung. Now, the Samsung definitely has the edge for zooming, as that 10x zoom is capable of pulling some very fine details and resolving objects that the iPhone simply just can't. On the other hand, the iPhone panorama mode is very capable, and it gives you very detailed, very wide photographs. So let me conclude by telling you what's better about the S23 Ultra. The S23 Ultra has a remarkable zoom range, and it's not a gimmick, and it does come in very handy when you want to capture something far away. Also, if you like to use your volume buttons as a shutter button like I do, having the volume buttons and the power button on the same side of the Samsung really helps, because on the iPhone, I'm constantly turning the phone off instead of taking a picture, and that's really annoying. So what's better about the iPhone 15 Pro? My personal opinion is that the photos and video from the iPhone 15 Pro look better to me with less artificial sharpening. They're also more detailed. Ultimately, these two phones are really evenly matched. Sometimes the iPhone would take a better picture, and at other times the Samsung would take a better picture. Probably you shouldn't be choosing between these phones just based on the picture quality. Android and iOS have their own advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, I've gone from Android to iOS, so I personally prefer iPhone over Android now because of all the other features, the usability, the iMessage, how well all of the apps work. So to me, the camera is just an add-on. If you're well into the Android ecosystem and you like Android and all your friends are on Android, then maybe the Samsung is for you. So if you have either one of these phones, I think you're going to be perfectly happy on your holiday, and you're going to come back with lots of decent photos. However, neither of these phones even come close to a proper camera. So I'm going to leave you with a couple of photos that I took with my Panasonic S5 Mark II on this trip, and you can see that it's not even close. But unless you have a proper camera, you're never going to notice, so forget anything I said about that. Bye for now. See you again soon, and please like and subscribe.